Yeah, okay. I think we're good. All right. So, well, I'm just very grateful and happy to be here with both of you. I mean, Ruby is a friend from the Reiki community also, and she actually just messaged me randomly yesterday because we thought that we're going to meet you tomorrow. So there had been some mix up with the schedule, but it's really great. I mean, we're here and we are
That's it.
together. So thank you for the presence and for just being here. Um, and maybe we can start by sharing. So how are you? How are you for today? What's up with what have you been doing maybe for
Today I'm good, thank you. It's only 10 a.m. here, so I do my morning routine is actually really getting as much work out of the way. So I wake up, focus. So for me, the focus is really important, and then I kind of really do all my emails, social media stuff. Then I found that's out of the way. And the rest of the day, I can do some more meditation practice or teaching or classes or
yeah.
coffee.
Yeah.
Enjoy
So
life.
so that's the a day in the life of friends.
How do we pronounce your last name, Frans? Stiene? Stein?
My last name,
How do
Stiene.
Stina? Oh, Stina. Okay, Stina.
It's the Dutch way. Yeah,
Yes,
Okay.
Stina.
Frans Stiene.
Stina.
Okay.
Hmm.
that's it.
Yeah. So Ru, I don't know, maybe you wanna
I'm
you
just
have a question first for Fran?
I'm just overwhelmed because even if I've heard France for most of the 21-day meditation, and then this is the second time that, no, kind of like the third time because the other one was just a short. Third time I've seen him and like talked to him, and I'm a huge fan. And it's like because of how you view Reiki or how you do it and with your book. This one, it's see all the post-it. It's like what Faye said earlier. The more once you start doing Reiki or learning about Reiki, the more that you want to go deeper into the practice, and then you realize that it's more than the hands-on healing. And that when I was at level 1 or level 2, when they introduced the Hatsureho, I just thought that it's just doing the motion thing. But then after doing the 21 days with France, Faye, it was like, oh, so this is what it really means, Like I never thought that the Kenyokyo was like a misogi, another Japanese term, or in that it's really about purification, not really just cleansing the negative stuff. And it's just really overwhelming. And then, like I said, like it's like you're peeling layers of layers of layers of layers, like with Reiki. And it brought to mind the poem that you wrote on your book.
Yeah,
Yes, thank
beautiful
you.
poem.
Uh-huh. I read it again because I'm fond of poetry, and it really speaks so much. Like, what was your inspiration for the poem? And then maybe Faye you remember if we were talking about earlier that things that you wanted to ask
Yeah,
friends.
yeah.
So I was thinking like, what made you write the poem? Did you write the poem before writing the book? Did you write the poem before starting getting to know, like being a Reiki practitioner?
No, actually, I think the one reason why I wrote a poem was due to some very specific experiences I had for myself. And, sometimes when we go really deep within our own practice, and I've been fortunate to work with the right teachers at the right time who could guide me into that space. And then that is, of course, not always easy. People say, oh, I had this experience and then blah, blah. But if we truly have a very direct experience, it has a ramification, and that ramification can last for the rest of your life, or, you know, maybe to be able to deal with this ramification, it might take 6-7 months. So for example, also Mikusui, when he sat on Mount Kurama for 21 days, people think, oh, it's just 21 days, but it's not really the truth. Because in Japan, before you're allowed to do the 21 days, you have to do the 7 days. Then before that, you have to do the 3 days. Before that, you have already need to practice. And then during the 21 days, you have some very direct experiences. And then it takes maybe another half a year or a year to really accommodate those kind of experiences. And so the poem was really written about some very direct experience I was having at that time. And if it was before or during the book, I can't remember. But yeah, it was something quite personal what suddenly came out. I'm not a big poet, but yeah, I enjoyed writing it. Actually, it's lovely.
Yeah. Wow. You know, Franz, you were mentioning earlier about the right people appearing at the right time. And actually, before you came in, Ruby and I were discussing because she was asking me about, you know, how I started my healing journey or how I even got to know Reiki or to know about Reiki. And I was telling her that it was actually very random, okay, because I didn't really know anything about it. It was a friend who invited me to go to class, and at that time it was like, um okay, this is really nice. And when I started learning it, um I to be honest, there was no direct or immediate impact. It at that time it was just, oh, this is very nice. I have a very accessible and an accessible tool that I could really use for
Yeah.
myself. But back then I didn't really know the essence of it or what it's really for in my life, why I actually got introduced to it. And you know, I actually picked up your book. So I'm reading an ebook of it. It's The Inner Heart of Reiki, Ruby's same book. And
Yeah.
I'm actually on chapter 5 right now. And as I was reading it, you know, um, it's just, it's like a mixture of, it's simple because it resonates with the soul and how you talk about the true self.
Yeah.
Because I truly resonate with that. Like, with, if I compare it or if I align it with what has happened in my life ever since I got introduced to Reiki, it has been a continuous discovery, like a self-discovery. And as you put it, it's like remembering your true self or remembering who you truly are. And it's, you know, it's profound and simple at the same time. As I was reading, as I started reading your book, because it's, I don't know, it's true. It's like you mentioned about having the direct experiences or like having the impacts in your life that you can only, I mean, it's you who experience it,
Yeah.
right? And going back to what I was mentioning about finding the true self, I learn, you know, as I practice and as I deepen the practice, it's really a journey of also embodying and then peeling those layers of conditioning or illusion that we think is real, you know. So
Yeah, I think sometimes people think, you know, when we start to learn the system of Reiki, we learn something new, but actually it's peeling away all the rubbish we don't need anymore and laying bare what we are already, you know. And yeah, for me, the system of Reiki, in the beginning, I learned some hints on healing. That was it. It was very basic.
yeah.
But then through practice and again, meeting the right teachers at the right time, I came to understand with also direct experience that it is so much more than just hands-on healing. And that Mikusui, the founder of the system of Reiki, created this really in-depth practice. And but it doesn't have to be difficult. The only difficult part is to practice. We don't need difficult language, because the true nature, your true self, actually is quite simple. It's so natural. It doesn't need elaborate language or elaborate historical context, because it's really who you are, how you act it out in your daily life, and we can see so many of these pointers within the system of Reiki, which unfortunately are often overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading, or actually listening to this particular teacher, friend of mine, and also one of my own teachers. And he was talking about that the true self, this true nature, that there is these old teachers said, in the future, so these teachers, maybe in the 1700 or 1800, who said, in the future, the true nature, the true self is often obscured by too much language, too elaborate language, because then it becomes so elaborate that we go, what are we talking about? And we kind of miss the point. I can describe this coffee in a very simple way, or I can make it so elaborate that we think, what are you really talking about? Just drink it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that, for me, has always been a really important element, to make it simple. I feel I'm just very simple. And I like those kind of simple books by those teachers like Sunryu Suzuki, for example, a Japanese Zen teacher. They write so direct and so simple. So they've been really great examples. Yeah. And for me also, we need to write from our own direct experience. I think that's the most important thing. Of course, I can write about the Philippines. I can do some research and Google things, etc., and write a beautiful story about it. And yet I've never been there. But for the people who live there, when they read my book, they will know, oh, he's never been there, because they know there's something missing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So therefore, ultimately, we need to, as a writer, we need to write from our own direct experience.
And it's like, when you write, there's that, it's an imprint of your soul, like your own journey is there. Definitely. And since we're already on this direction of the conversation, I'm actually curious about your journey. Like, I mean, how you actually started with Reiki. I mean, because Ruby and I were talking about how we got into Reiki earlier, and I think it would be also nice to know how you also got into it. Like, for me, it was something so random. Like it was just meant to find me, maybe, or I was meant to find it or to be connected with it. Maybe there was some sort of readiness at that moment, or I don't know. But how about you? How did you become connected to the practice of Reiki?
Also very random, I must say. Yeah, I was 30. I was never into any of these kind of practices. I was more like a party person.
Okay.
Oh, you and Faye should sing later together. She also has a nice voice.
Oh.
Yeah, this is good. So I was in India living at that time for 2 years, and from probably when I was 16 till about 30, I suffered from a lot of back problems. So it was quite severe. So often I needed to take strong painkillers and physiotherapy, etc. So I was in the north of India, in Ladakh, a beautiful area. It's called Little Tibet in the Himalayas. Very stunning. And I had difficulty walking because of my back. I felt emotionally not really in the right place. And I met this guy who said, oh, there's a local healer going to do something, a couple of days. Do you guys want to come along? And it was about 5 foreigners. And when we got there, the whole place was packed with local people. And the lady who was the healer was chanting. And one by one, she would call the people who were there, and he would touch them or say something. And we were just not allowed to participate. We would just sit at the back. So it was kind of finished. And of course, he hadn't called any of us foreigners because it was only for the local people. And then she was standing there and she said something in a local dialect, and someone translated it and said, "Oh, you have to come." And I said, "Oh, okay." And
It was
so
just you. It was just you.
me. And
Okay.
so I pointed to my back. And then when she touched me, I had a really interesting direct experience. And I felt like a tremendous amount of heat from my crown to my feet. I started to cry. There was no fronts. It was just wide open space. If you had told me it lasted 1 minute or 1 hour or 1 day, I would have believed you all three. So it was in this timeless, wide open space. And then I sat back and I go like, what the hell just happened? So, and the next morning, all I wanted to do, and this was not me, right? All I wanted to do was go to, they have the, you know, when you travel, you have these local little backpacker bookshops. All I wanted to go was go to one of those little bookshops and buy books on spirituality. And there was like, what, do I really want to do this? This is not France, you know, where's the cafe? So then I went to the bookstore and bought some different books on Buddhism, on yoga, on Ayurveda, etc. And one day I bought a book about Reiki. It was just laying there. And I know it had like pictures of the hand position. So I was sitting on the edge of the bed and looking at it, like going like this. Oh, this looks nice. That's interesting. So that was kind of the beginning. And then I met a teacher in Nepal, in Kathmandu, where I was living at that time. And he was English, and I did Reiki 1, 2, and 3. He was smoking some marijuana during it. So he was a bit of a hippie. I enjoyed it. It was very basic. But because I had a lot of time at that time, I would just start to experiment and sit there. And I would sit these Buddhist places in Kathmandu. You had statues of Medicine Buddha, for example. And I go, well, let me do distance healing to Medicine Buddha. You know, like these kind of things came up. And then we went to Darjeeling in India, and we started up a Reiki center actually for volunteer to do volunteer treatments on the local community, people who had all sorts of physical, emotional, whatever kind of illnesses or diseases. And we did that for a year. So that was a really great apprenticeship in a way, because I had no idea. And then I'm also started to meet lots of other people who practice the system of Reiki. And some came with, oh, well, why do you do it like this? What do you do like this? And, you know, we do differently, or we do the same. At the same time, I also had some very specific experiences. And so I went to a Buddhist teacher there, and he said, well, what are you practicing? I said, I don't know, Reiki. And he said, is it Buddhist? And I go, why? He said, because the experiences you're having are very particular to Buddhist experiences. I said, I don't know where it's from. So that really triggered my quest to know where Mikosui took his teachings from. And so in 2001, for the first time, I went to Japan, then 2003 again, etc. And in 2012, I started to train with a Japanese priest. It's they called like an ajari, and an ajari is a priest who can train other priests. And that really has opened me even further to where Mikosui took his teachings from. So that's in a nutshell my journey.
Wow, pretty interesting. Even at that age, 30.
Yeah.
And to travel at a young age. You
it's
know,
like one thing that led to the next, and to the next, and to the next. And it
it
just
like,
unfolded.
kind of like you're being like divinely guided, like you should be here, you should be here, you know, like sending the right teachers. Because you were not really you didn't actually like seek them out. It's just kind of like come, like you're meeting the right people at the right time?
I think if you're open, but you also, of course, have to be aware. I mean, there's also a lot of teachers who are not really teachers. So we have to be also quite careful with that. But yeah, I've been fortunate enough to meet what I see as real teachers, like my current teacher or the teachers I had before that, or so who really, and what I mean by that, the real teachers who really just not only in an intellectual or historical way, but who really had direct experience in a big way, not just for 1 second, but in a big way of their true self. And of course, when that happens, these teachers have a certain clarity to guide you into that direct experience of your true self. And that is ultimately what makes a difference. I mean, I can read many books and do lots of research about cooking, but if I never really cook, then whatever I talk about cooking is dry because I've never had the real experience. Also, it's not just about once cooking that meal. No, I have to do it again and again and again, maybe thousands of times. And then I can talk about the real direct experience of the food, of the meal, also taste, etc. So yeah, in that way, I've been very fortunate to meet true teachers who guide me in that right direction.
Right. It's the practice. It's really the continuous practice too, not just that one-time moment that you got that spark, that sort of spark that, oh, okay, I'm now learning this. But it's really the continuous process. But I just want to say, wow, it was a beautiful experience of, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like the first encounter with the healer, it wasn't actually Reiki, right? But it was a healing experience from the locals, and that actually triggered or opened up that I would like to say like a soul craving in you of wanting to discover more, and like it opened up a lot of things, like you being curious about different practices, and you being led to different places, and actually starting to practice Reiki, and so on and so forth, right? So it just unraveled like that.
Yeah. I think you have to keep digging ultimately. Sometimes a person the other day said, "Frans, how long should I chant a mantra?" I said, "Well, what do you think?" "Oh, yeah, maybe for 1 month or 1 year." And I go, "Well, what is the aim of the mantra? Is to lay bare your true self. So keep chanting it until you've laid bare your true self, right?"
Right.
So often we don't do this. It's the same with Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga. We practice it on a very superficial manner, almost like a hobby. And then we find it very difficult to integrate it into our daily life. But all of these practices need to be integrated into our daily life. And then we also start to see that your true nature, Ruby's true nature, and my true nature are ultimately exactly the same. And we can call that true nature yoga, Reiki, or Buddhism, or Christianity, or it doesn't matter. Those are just labels of that true nature. Often we get stuck on these labels, but that true nature or that true self, that brightness, that luminosity is exactly the same.
Right.
And so that the first direct experience I had when I was 30 is ultimately the same direct experience you might experience when you delve really deep into the system of Reiki. Yeah.
Yeah. While you were speaking, it just came to me that, these different modalities or practices, whatever they are or whatever we call them, it's also like a gateway, or there's always, when we start practicing, whether it starts in a superficial level, I think there comes a point wherein there is like an invitation to discover more or to dive deeper.
Yes.
And it's just up to you whether you recognize that or you actually respond to it, right?
That's it. Yeah. Someone can give us a great book, but if we don't read it, then, or someone can give us a great teaching. So to really, receive, there's a great story of a Zen master, and the Zen master was visited by a professor. And the professor said, I want to learn about Zen. And the Zen master, who was also a tea master, sat him down, and he was pouring tea in this cup. And he kept pouring, and the tea was overflowing, like, wow. And the professor said, stop, the tea is overflowing in the cup. And he said, the Zen master said, I can't teach you anything. You are too full. Because, when we are too full, then we say, we know it all. I don't need to learn anything anymore. Oh, I know hands-on healing. Oh, I know my true self. I know whatever. And then we stop. So even if it's presented right in front of us, even if you, for example, Faye, gives this and shows this true self in all its glory, if that person is full and is like this or like that, then they don't see it, they don't want to practice. So yeah, it's completely up to us. The teacher can be a great teacher, but it's up to us to apply it.
Right.
What's that beautiful sense? There's also a Chinese saying, they use it in Zen. The teacher opens the door, but you have to walk through it.
Yes, it's not a passive thing, right? So
oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's you who decides.
I think this is another issue now, when, particularly within the system of Reiki, where you have the initiation or attunement or Reiju, however you call it, and the way that is portrayed as a very passive thing. The teacher does something on you, and voila, now you are a Reiki practitioner or a Reiki teacher, and now you don't have to do anything anymore because that's it. But if we truly investigate, then we realize that is not the truth. And actually, I was just reading this quote the other day, and it's a really important element, but let me see if I can find it for you. And where did I have it? I have it here. And this is, I think, a really important element, what we need to keep looking at within the system of Reiki, actually within all of these teachings. And it goes like this: practice in a straightforward way. There's no need to live in a fantasy and pretend to be anything other than what you are. Be honest and open with yourself. If you are a good person, recognize that goodness and build upon it. If you are a deluded person, recognize that delusion and begin to disentangle yourself from it. Be rid of it. It is essential that your practice be pure, straightforward, and honest. This is from Tibetan teacher Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. But this is it, we often are, I think, not really honest with ourselves, and we say, oh, I've now received the attunement, now I can do healing, now I'm a healer, now I'm that great bright light, but that is not really being honest, So therefore, it's really tricky to be honest to ourselves and to realize that we're only scratching the surface and that we always can go deeper. And I think this is also why it's so important with true teachers, because when I look at my teachers, I see their state of mind, the way they behave in their daily life, their accomplishment, so to speak. Then I go, shit, I want what they are having. I want that clarity what they are having. I want that peace, what they are having. I want that state of mind of no anger, no worry, being grateful, what they are having. I don't have that yet. So I need to be honest and say, no, I don't have that yet. And therefore keep practicing.
I have a question, maybe before Ru asks another question, because as you say, right now you teach, but you also have your teachers and you have your guides, and you continue learning, and you see something that you also want to be able to experience, right? And I'm curious about like as you practice, or as you dig deeper, as you discover more and more, and you like take off all the other unnecessary layers there are, for your experience, Frans, what have been I would say probably blockages or struggles, or blockages that you felt that were big or significant, that Reiki or your practice actually helped you release? Or
I think we all have different issues, and if I look over my life, then definitely I feel less angry, less worried, those kind of elements. I feel more kind to myself, so really that I can be more doing what I want to do, doing what I need to do, and at that same time also that I feel I can have a better clarity for people, so I can see clearer how I can help them. I would be even more clearer, of course, when I look at my teachers, for example, and I see how clear they are, then that is so much easier for them. Their clarity is so great that they know exactly how to help you. So this is also what I really want to establish over time.
right.
And so it's a kind of turning your practice inwards and to rediscover what your strengths are. And that, I think, is also a really important element. It's not always for everybody to become a practitioner or a teacher. I think this is nowadays also a mistake what a lot of people make. I'm going to practice Reiki so I can become a practitioner or a teacher. And that in itself is actually the wrong motivation, because the first motivation of all is the embodiment of the precepts, right? And from that, we can become a teacher or a practitioner. So the motivation, therefore, is very different. And if we only see it to become a practitioner or a teacher, then it will become a little bit unstable, because we haven't really laid that foundation for a stable body, mind, and energy to help other people.
Right. I remember there's a part in your book, it was the early chapters, that you were talking about Mikao Usui's experience, that when he was in Mount Kurama. So he didn't really, you said he didn't really know the hands-on healing when he went there, but it's like after he had his enlightenment that he was like, he got the inspiration to actually know how to share it to people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is it, and also Mikasui wasn't doing hands-on healing on Mount Kurama. These practices, these 21-day practices are very intense. You practice for about 20 hours, then you might sleep for 3 hours or something like that. And you do that for 21 days. It's super intense. I did it in a little monastery for a week and a half, like an intense practice like that. After a week and a half, I got like, man, I don't know if I could do this on the top of a mountain in any kind of weather. for 21 days, super intense. So yes, of course, when we do these kind of practices, then your great bright light is being laid bare more and more and more. And of course, it doesn't not just come only out of your hands, but out of your whole being. But because we work with our hands so much, you know, we touch everything with our hands. Therefore, hands-on healing ultimately is our birthright. You know, we do it all the time, but we can give it so much more when we've laid bare that great bright light, that luminosity, what Mikasui is talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So maybe Ruby and Pao, we're joined by Pao also. Maybe they also have questions.
John Paul, Pao Garcia.
Hi, Frans.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
So yeah, I'm just, you know, like just enjoy listening and remembering the stuff that I've read and what Frans is saying for the past, you know, like 21 days journey that I had with him since I think early this year, from the Hatsureho to now the chanting of the precepts. And the precept chanting, it's like the culmination of like everything. And like what you guys were saying, it's Reiki is simple but really difficult when you would really think about the practice, you know. And just thinking about the precepts like do not worry, do not anger. It's like every day you have this kind of like stressor, you know, with what's been going on. And then sometimes I find myself like, okay, I'm trying to recall what Frans said. I'll do like this, you know. And you know, to try to recall, like it's a discipline to do the practice when you wake up in the morning and then when you sleep, you know. And then in any situation, it's like the discipline of do your work diligently. It's the work of imbibing the precepts, not really the work that you do every day. So I was like realizing it. Oh, so this is what it actually, you know, like what it actually means. And it's not really that easy, you know, to
No,
be
absolutely.
mindful, you know, and to share it with other people. It's like, sometimes it's so hard, you know. You know, unless they're a Reiki practitioner, you know, like, but then they would go like, how can you not be angry? How can you not be like, it's just, you know, sometimes
it's very tricky. And this is, I think, you know, what is so wonderful within the precepts, you know, it says, you know, practice diligently. Sometimes it's being translated as work hard. And then what people think, oh, in my daily life, I have to work hard as a baker or as a banker or whatever. But no, actually, the better translation would be, you know, do not anger, do not worry, be grateful. Practice this diligently, you know, is much better, because then we start to see that the work hard or practice this diligently is pointing to the precepts itself, you know, and that really is the blessing of the precepts when we embody that more and more during our day. That, of course, it's not suddenly our anger is gone and our worry is gone, or suddenly we are these compassionate beings. That takes time. But that over time we soften our anger, we soften our worry. And that is really the most important element, because that is true healing. And in that way, we can also take that into our daily life, right? We can take this no anger, no worry into our daily life. And that will already have an effect on your local community. So we cannot always go, I always say, you know, we cannot walk in town and do hands-on healing on everybody. But as much as we can walk around in that state of mind of the precepts, and that in itself is already healing in itself, and that already can trigger healing within someone else.
Right. It's so profound, you know. Like, can you imagine, like, all this diseases is actually disease?
That's it. It's a dis-ease. And then most of the time, what is a dis-ease with ourselves, right? Yeah, we are not feeling at ease within ourselves because of the anger and the worry, because of not being grateful, because we don't practice diligently, because we are not true to our way in our being, and we're not being compassionate.
Right. I love so much this conversation, and how it's just like a light bulb right now in me, how you explained that precept of working diligently. Thank you for that, because it's really having this lens, or looking at it's actually the inner work, like we're asked to do the inner work diligently. And as you were talking about that, I can't help but I felt like smiling and laughing, because I would recall so many instances before when I started practicing, and then like the universe always gives these little tests every day, like when you start in the morning and then you meditate on the precepts, and then suddenly something happens, and then it's like, oh, this is the test now. So I told myself earlier, I will not be angry, so it's like you're also learning how to navigate it at your own pace as well, because that's so true. It's not automatic, but the fact that you have that awareness when that moment comes, and you can actually having that awareness, maybe the way that you do it today is not the same as you did it yesterday, or the way that you will do it in the coming days, but having that awareness, and actually having that diligent practice, or that commitment to doing the work, it makes a whole lot of difference, and it would actually build up. I think these are the building blocks of being able to finally strip off those layers, right?
If we only do a practice half an hour a day, then in a year's time we might say, oh, I've been practicing for a year, but again, that is not really the truth. We've been practicing half an hour for a year. That is not practicing a year. Then of course also sometimes days we skipped, but if we sprinkle also the practice during the whole day, oh, how is my body, because of course if I'm sitting like this, my mind is also like this, then my breathing is like this. So therefore, if I adjust my body, then my mind also adjusts itself a little bit. How's my breathing? How's my energy? Constantly, actually, in that way, my OCD is pretty good. But yeah, so therefore you can really integrate it in all you do, at work. Oh, how am I sitting? What am I thinking? What am I doing? Am I actually thinking about the precepts? Am I being kind? Ultimately, it comes back to the one thing: compassion, kindness. Yeah.
True. It's that practice of kindness and compassion, first and foremost, to ourselves.
Because ultimately, I cannot be kind to you if I'm not kind to myself. It's impossible. I cannot give you coffee if I don't have coffee. So the first thing I need is to stimulate that within myself. And whatever, therefore, during the day, we can put that filter. Am I being kind? Am I being kind? Am I being kind? It's a bit boring, but when we do this, then it's time we also start to make that change. Oh, I can do this in a kinder way. I could be kinder to the shop assistant. I could be kinder to my boss. I could be kinder to my partner. And then slowly, the changes start to happen. But, when Mikasui realized that the precepts are actually the essence of the system of Reiki, the essence of our true nature, then it's not so easy. So therefore, he also added hands-on healing, meditation, symbols and mantras, rejuice. And, makes perfectly sense, because when we touch ourselves, that is the first thing, we're making friends with ourselves. We're easing our own suffering. So then, of course, that will have an effect on other people.
Kind of like the ripple effect.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you would notice it with the people that you interact with daily. Like for example, like with my mom, like like less friction. So you're looking at the person in a different light, or you have a shift of perception, or like thinking, and then it's kind of like when France was in the web classes, the inner bright light. It's I started looking at people like, oh, they also have a light, kind of like shining like
Yeah,
mine, and then take away all the physical layers. You're all one, sharing the same energy, working with the same energy. And what energy are you going to, like giving out today, or to yourself or to other people? And that's when I was reading the book and doing the practice, like, so yeah, you really connect. It really boils down to the precepts and doing them, and then imbibing them and understanding them layer by layer. Like, what do you mean by anger, by worry, by being grateful? I can't just say, like, oh, I'm grateful for the coffee. I have to think about the people who make my coffee, the
absolutely.
farmer who, the coffee beans, and then you appreciate the hard work of the farmers, and stuff like that. And it's like really a ripple effect.
Yes.
And then, it's really awesome. And Jolo, we call him Jolo. Do you have, like, you want to share or ask questions? I mean, I'm grateful that France is here with us, thousands of miles away, but there's really no boundaries, no borders, you know. Thank you, France.
You're welcome.
So, Jolo.
Yeah, hi friends, hi Faye, hi Ruby.
Hello.
I This is a very interesting conversation because I felt that this is the deeper meaning of what we're really practicing. And when I was taking the Reiki training, you know, I our conversation made me recall the teaching of our master, no, Tito Noel Roselia. It's about beingness. When you're in touch with yourself, things you ripple it out.
Yeah,
Because at the core of it all, we are connected, and at our deeper sense, we are all Reiki. And then when we understand that we are Reiki, we we uh, we had that effect on other people, even just by standing there and
absolutely.
embodying.
Yeah,
Right? So it reminds me of that instance, like it's a reminder that you have to go back with the teachings and review them and understand them completely so that you would be able to practice more than just touching, more than just chanting the mantras, but going back into the deeper essence of it. Thank you, friends. Thank you, guys.
yeah. For me, is really each time. It's a little bit like a table. What is being coated over, it's say it's a golden table, but it's coated over with all sorts of layers. And as we sandpaper it, and we get one little glimpse, but we have to keep doing it, until that whole golden table is revealed. And even then, we have to keep doing it, because if we leave, then dust can fall on it again, and so then we still have to clean it. So this is why, for me, the system of Reiki is not a 1 or 2 or 3 day class. It's a lifelong practice. Every day we have to retouch base with that true self, again and again and again. And, ultimately on the deepest level as possible. And this is why sometimes it's great to check for yourself. What is that? Think about it. If you really become one with the universe, well, Jesus could walk on water. I mean, of course, that is not the aim, but what it means is that he was one with the elements. So, And then we can really say, okay, that is oneness. That is really a deep understanding of interconnectedness. So there's these Tibetan yogis who were one with flames, with fire, or one with a rock. And those kind of teachings and metaphors, they're actually not really even metaphors, but pointing out, then we can see, oh man, I still have to practice a lot. Yeah, and it's not that we need to walk on water, but it is then that we really, our true nature shines forth in all its glory. And what is that true nature? Then is compassion to its fullest, and that we are, yeah, super compassionate, just like what the precepts say, you know. And then we've ceased to be angry and worried and fearful. Then we can just be grateful, and we can be true to our inner being, and we can be compassionate. And as you were saying, then we can just stand to someone, next to someone, then there is already a possibility for healing to take place. Yeah.
Yeah, it brings to mind, like, in one of the session, the web classes with you, you know, like the mind follows the energy. And, you know, like same when you do the hands-on healing, like you have to be there with the client and not just, you know, like think about something else and then trust, like, oh, Reiki would still flow even if I'm not paying attention, you know. So I want to hear more about it, because I did it with a client, you know, just really staying there.
Yeah.
And I also felt like you were also like healing a part of yourself.
Absolutely, because at that time when we really focus, then of course you're healing part of yourself. This is when hands-on healing becomes meditation. You know, when we do hands-on healing on ourselves or on someone else and we're distracted, then, or we're thinking about tomorrow, or watching television or chatting or whatever, then of course it's not so good. And in a way, Mikasui again pointed this out in many times. For example, in the precepts, he says Shinshin Kaizen, mind body improvement. It's a very common Japanese teaching, is where the mind and body needs to be in harmony. What does that mean? Now my body is right here, right? But most of the time my mind is in the past or in the future. So there is no harmony between mind and body. And very easy to test. And this is why, again, we have to be brutally honest to ourselves. If we say it doesn't matter what we're thinking during hands-on healing, then we're not really honest, I think, because we all know it. If I give you a hug and my mind is somewhere else, then if you're sensitive enough, you will feel that it's just an empty hug. You go like, well, I don't know, Frans is not here. Or if I'm talking to you and at the same time, I'm kind of distracted and I'm talking like this, blah, blah, blah. And then you think, hello, Frans. Yeah, you're just babbling along, but you're not really here, right? You can feel the difference. So this is why it's so important to be brutally honest to ourselves and say, hey, let me investigate. Don't just believe what someone has taught me. Let me investigate if that is the truth or not. And then when we start to focus during hands-on healing, Shinshin Kaizen, mind, body, and the same, the Reiki 2 symbol, Honsensation N, if you translate this, my original nature is right mindfulness. So we have to be mindful. Mikasui pointed it out again and again and again. So if my hands are on my body or on someone else and I think about something else, I'm definitely not mindful. So therefore, I'm not really practicing the system of Reiki. I'm practicing something quite differently. So if I want to practice the system of Reiki, I need to practice according to Mikasui's instructions. What is being mindful during hands-on healing, or mindful during my meditation, mindful during today? And then we can really say, okay, now I'm practicing Mikasui's teachings.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of being brutally honest, you know, it's, and we're talking about the practice, because we know that, yes, of course, the essence really is being the great bright light beingness. And we know that, yes, we get a glimpse or the experiences of those. But again, we go back to the diligence in the practice, right? And to be brutally honest, for me, it's the challenge. And I think it's also the challenge for a lot of practitioners or people who get introduced to Reiki or start their Reiki journey or their healing journey for that matter. So maybe a question I have in mind is like, what could you advise or what could you say to practitioners who really are having a difficult time with working on diligence? And maybe to be more specific, it's like actually doing the practice of the meditations, sitting there, because honestly, it's really my challenge. It's like the main challenge for me.
I think that's for most of us, and because also in our society, we're not trained to do this on a regular basis. I mean, we're trained to brush our teeth on a regular basis, to eat ourselves, to wash ourselves on a regular basis, but not to train the mind on a regular basis. And, we can see this in the olden days. I remember I was in Hong Kong and I was walking around teaching. I was teaching there, walking around early morning, and so many people doing Tai Chi and Qigong. And I thought, wow, this is just wonderful. But, that's also changing. So to train yourself into having a regular daily practice, first you have the right motivation. So therefore, again, if my motivation is I'm just doing this to teach or to practice hands-on healing on others, that motivation will not really be stable enough to help us to sit down. But if my motivation is I do, then that's a very different motivation to sit down. Hang on, I'm angry again. Let me sit down. I'm worried again. Let me sit down. So first of all, really look at your motivation. What is your motivation that you're practicing? Anyway, it's the same with yoga. Years ago, I went to a talk by this yogi at a yoga center, and he was a really well-known yoga teacher. Not necessarily the physical yoga, the asanas, but so the first thing he asked about 10, 15 people in the audience, why do you practice yoga? After we've done that, he said, okay, so if I asked this question, why do you practice yoga? And out of this whole group of people, I got 10, 15 answers. Then none of you are practicing yoga. And everybody was like, huh, what? So none of you said that you practice it for self-awakening. And so then, of course, if we have the motivation to be fit and we practice yoga, then that is the motivation. So then we need to change that motivation to, I want to practice it for self-awakening. And it's the same for the system of Reiki. But because we now see the system of Reiki solely as hands-on healing on someone else, also that, on yourself, but mainly on someone else, then we lose that motivation of practice diligently for ourselves and sitting down. So first, check your motivation. Again and again, not just once a day, but maybe quite a few times during the day. What is my motivation? Why am I doing this? Yeah. So then we get a whole different insight, and that will hopefully then trigger more diligent sitting down and doing the meditations like Joshin Kokyeho, Hatsureho, chanting, etc.
Yeah, wow, okay. It's really planting that seed of intention, that motivation, because it all springs from there, right? Whatever you plant and you nurture, then it will determine what will bloom, right? So
yes,
yeah. That's so true. And right, it's checking it again and again, checking in with yourself, checking in with your body, mind, spirit. Like, are we still here? Are we in the right place? Thank you for that.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get distracted these days. We get distracted by all these gadgets, we get distracted by life. So therefore, again and again, we need to recheck that motivation, and then we have to couple that, of course, with action. Some people say, oh, just your intent. No, but that's not enough. I can have the intent that I go shopping and to get my groceries, but they don't suddenly appear here in my house and in the fridge. I need to couple my intent with action. So yeah, first of all, right motivation, right intent, then right action.
Exactly. They come hand in hand, which circles back to what we said earlier about not being passive. So it's really being an active participant in your healing, as we say. Right.
Indeed, yeah. You have to be very active in that. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. That's
it brings you to a different level of understanding what Reiki is. And I was reading the book, The Inner Heart of Reiki, because I actually asked Frans, like, which book should I get? And then, it's I was just like thinking that it's so amazing that Usui Sensei was able to I'm not sure if it's the right word come up, but like have this practice shared, and to even think about, because I was listening to Frans and then talk about the symbols, the mantras, the precepts. They're really interconnected, especially the mantra. The power symbol, the first symbol, the second symbol, the third symbol. Like the precepts are also connected. Like when with the third symbol, the right mind, and then the second symbol talks about harmony. It's also found in the precept. It's like, like you really have to meditate on them. It's really, that's words are not really enough. You really have to experience it. And when we were doing the chanting earlier, I think I wrote it in the chat. Like the third symbol came to mind because I don't know why, when like you're chanting the precepts and the symbol was being drawn in my mind, it started at the right time and ended at exactly the last precept in Japanese. It was
nice.
It's synchronized, and I was like, I had to open my eyes and, oh, okay, so I had to do it again, chant it, and then like write it again. It's kind of like an aha moment.
Good, thank you.
And it was really amazing, and like really, like everything. This is kind of like preordained. Like nothing happens by chance. And when Frans was saying about finding the right teacher, and like Frans is here.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then Faye, you were saying something earlier when we were chatting about, or the other day, what you wanted to hear from Frans about, like what Reiki is today or something like that.
Yeah, maybe we can end it with that. Like, especially with our world situation right now, like everything that's happening all over the world, like maybe some words of encouragement, probably words of encouragement that you could say to people who are practicing, or maybe even people who are about to discover it, they start diving into self-discovery. Because for example, I know of quite a lot of people when the pandemic started, they didn't really have this practice of meditation or self-awareness, or they didn't really care much about these things. But then there was like a sudden shift, and then suddenly there was like the same that I mentioned about your story. It's like this craving to be still and to connect at the same time. with other people, like not just like a shallow level, but in a deeper sense. So yeah, you can take it away from there, like maybe.
Yeah, it like even help the practitioners, like who's somehow.
Yeah, I always say to be able to do all of these, we need the 3 P's. So the P of practice, the P of perseverance, and the P of patience. Is not something we take a pill like, the pain is gone. It's a very different. So therefore, yeah, use the 3 P's. Practice, persevere with your practice, and mix patience in. It's not suddenly going to happen and so, oh, now I'm suddenly the most compassionate person in the world. And when we look at that, again, be honest with that. Slowly walk the path, take your time, reach out to community with each other, help each other. But yeah, first of all, it starts with yourself. A better world is not being created by other people, but starts with yourself. When you feel less angry, less worried, more grateful, more true to your way into being, and more compassionate, that is where it all starts. So we have to take that self-responsibility and be an active participant, but slowly.
And I'm gonna add a last P to that. I would say perfect. It's the perfect practice. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. Easy to remember as well. The 3 P's. Thank you.
3 P's. Jolo, you have something to add or say, or?
No, I was just blown away with this conversation. Like, I had so much aha moment. Like, I don't feel that there are words, that I could say, because everything was said perfectly. Everything has been, aligned. Everything is right for me. And I really do agree with everything that was discussed.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'll talk to you soon, and have a wonderful evening, and see you next time.
Thank you so
Frans.
much. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
your
Frans. Hopefully you can come here.